Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Saturday, January 27, 2024. The time is 1 o'clock. This is a special session of the School Board of Trustees of the School City of East Chicago. The place is the Administration Building, 1401 East 144th Street, East Chicago, Indiana. We are also via live stream at www.scec.k12.in.us. This is a special meeting for the school board and public to conduct these interviews for today. And so please, it's not to be considered a public community meeting, so please if you can't keep your voices down, put your cell phones on silent for the benefit of the candidates. I'd like to call to order, starting with Trustee Smith.
Good
Present.
afternoon.
He's doing roll call. Call to order. Trustee Smith.
Present.
Trustee Gibson King.
Present.
Trustee Gomez.
Present.
And myself is also present. Now I'm going to turn it over to Attorney Harris.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
All right, I first want to congratulate you for making it to this point in the process to fill the vacant seat on the school board. For today, you'll have 3 minutes to answer each question that you're asked. All of the school board members will be asking you questions.
Okay.
It's anticipated that today's interview will take up to 30 minutes. Following today's interviews, the board will convene, and it's expected that the board will make a final decision on who will fill that vacancy in the coming week. Do you have any questions?
No, sir, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
You will have an allotment of 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions. Please, starting now, state your name and address for the record and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Good afternoon. My name is Maria Mercedes Taylor. However, my preferred name is Mercedes Taylor. I currently reside at 4320 Parish Avenue. I have been a citizen of East Chicago for 32 years. I am also a East Chicago Central High School alumni. I have been employed by Franciscan Alliance Health for 16 years, where I currently hold the position of the Corporate Revenue Cycle IS Education Supervisor. I have been a member of my church, Grace City, Indiana, in East Chicago for 21 years, where I serve as the administrator and the board member. I am a mother of 2 young adults who are also formerly East Chicago Central alumni students. And lastly, I am a wife of a retired police officer for the city of East Chicago who served our city for 30 years, and we are now embarking in our 20th year of marriage.
Trustee Gibson King will be the first.
Hi, good afternoon, Mercedes. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So Trustee Smith, I apologize.
Okay, sure.
Good afternoon.
Hi,
Thank
good
you for taking the time out of your day.
My pleasure.
My question to you is, how would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
In differences of opinions and needed actions, collaboration is very important. And with collaboration, it takes effective communication. With effective communication, you have to have open dialogue. You have to have respectful, open dialogue, be open to his perspectives, his or her perspectives, my perspectives, and active listening. Like, you have to truly you have to make the effort to actively listen to what that person is saying, meaning you have to just be quiet, understand, listen to understand and not to respond. Understand where that person is coming from, understand where he's coming from, and ensure that is all for the common good. And obviously, with sharing perspectives and aligning them up with our policies, it's going to ensure that we reach the common good, which is our children.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Trustee King.
Yes. Good afternoon, Mercedes.
Good afternoon.
Yes. My question is, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
To preserve student retention, I think it's very important that we engage the parents and the guardians in the process. And by doing that, we have to, I believe we have to provide workshops, educate them, build, and I would say provide workshops and educate, I'm talking about our parents. A lot of them don't know how to help navigate their children's education. So I think it's very important that we partner with them partner with them and show the child that we are a united front with the parent. The education system and the parents need to provide that united front or have that united front to the child so they can understand we're on the same page. It's also important, I believe, that building community partnerships. We have, especially in our district, we have many alumni that are still living in our city and are still serving in some capacity, one way, form, or another, in our city. And they're very open to serving and providing any type of services financially, even their skill set, anything that they could do to help partner with the school city to better retain our children in our city and have them come back and be valuable citizens in our city.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Gomez.
Thank you. Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? Expound on why and how the district should focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses that you've identified.
I've been doing a lot of researching on our Department of Education website, looking on our websites, the report cards that we have posted up on our school websites. And if I'm interpreting the information that I'm seeing correctly, it appears that we need help on all areas. However, I strongly believe that we should focus on, as far as subjects is concerned, math and reading. Of course, reading, we have a lot of children, even young adults that could read, but they're not comprehending what they're reading. And that's a problem. Because, if they're not comprehending what they're reading, they're not going to be able to make, just basic life decisions based off the information that's being provided to them. In addition to that, one of the things that I did identify, or I did see in one of the websites was, and it was very alarming, was the percentage or where we rate or where we measure in the math subject. I was alarmed to see that our grades 3rd through, I believe, 8th and our 10th grades were actually at the same level. And that was very disturbing to me. So I think that's an area that we would need to tackle. So whatever resources are out there, whatever we have to do, I definitely would like to be a part of that solution.
If chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting ideas or views?
Great question. Definitely approach with professionalism. Professionalism and trust is really huge. But I think, before even coming to that point of having conflict, by building positive relationships amongst each other, I think you could build that trust and build that respect. And I think if by keeping the vision, the mission, and the goals of the school city or the school district in the forefront at all times, we could always come to a conflict resolution strategy that'll be best in the best interest of our children. But other than that, respect and professionalism at all times. And I think a very important part to that is understanding when to disengage. There's times that you just have to be very realistic and assess the problem or the conflict, and you may just have to sleep on it and come back the next day and share perspectives make sure you're listening as well, because when you're actively listening, obviously, you are understanding that other party. When you sleep on it, then you could definitely mirror them together and say, okay, I see where the gap was. It could be just a gap in communication. It could be just a gap in understanding. But those are the components, or that's the way I would approach it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Just in time.
Ms. Taylor, how familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district? And if selected, what changes would you like to see?
Being an East Chicago Central alumni and having children that are also alumni of our school district or byproducts of our schools, I was able to experience firsthand the challenges. So that's number one. Number two, I've attended school board meetings. I do attend school board meetings. I provide feedback when necessary. If I am not here physically, the school board YouTube account currently has 617 subscribers and close to 60,000 views. You can rest assured that my engagement is factored into those numbers. So I'm very abreast as to the things that you guys, are faced with, decisions that you guys make, and where we stand as a district.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yes, Mrs. Taylor, what is your understanding of special education programs and that are offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? Do they have equal access to the same resources as general education teachers? And if not, what would be that to address the disparity?
My understanding is the IEP program was the individualized education program for our kids. I understand we do have that program in place for, I think grades pre-K through the 12th grade. I do understand that they are not treated separately, that they are not a separate order of our district, and I agree with that. I'm aligned with that. I believe they should be treated, they should have access to the same resources, access to the same support, access to just the same approach and the same effort that it takes to educate a general child. So that is my understanding of it. And again, just continue to support to provide that to them, because they all have the potential of learning, they just learn differently. And we just need to develop and pour into our professionals and develop them so that they can navigate their education accordingly.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have the next question. Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
That's a loaded question. I'll try my best. I perceive it to be where I think we could do a little better in our transparency as it relates to the budget process. I think we are transparent. However, I think possibly providing maybe a summary or providing just something in plain language to our community when they come to our meetings. I mean, we hand them this claim docket and they're just seeing a lot of numbers. And you guys are calling out a lot of numbers and this claim docket number, XYZ. But I think providing a summary where it's just plain language for them that they could really just understand and just be able to have a level-headed conversation with us, I think is important. And possibly even, entertain the idea of a budget referendum where it also, we just partner with the community and we take mutual accountability. Because if that's a board, we are, building or creating policies and executing them, if we don't have the commitment from the community to help us, bridge that gap or help us execute that, then we're just sitting here just making calls. But we need I think it's very important that community engagement plays a big role in how we allocate our resources for cost efficiency purposes.
What qualifications background and skills do you believe you possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
Aside from currently sitting on two boards, and I serve as a president in capacity in one of them, the line of work that I'm in, we deal with adult education. And my department is responsible for building training environments, is responsible for curriculum development, is responsible for assessment development. And we do that for 15 hospitals. If you're familiar with Franciscan Alliance, we are a large healthcare organization, and we employ close to 20,000 employees. Well, about 60% of them have to be educated, trained, and assessed by my department, and they've had to have successfully completed our program or our training before they are even given access or security to our hospital system. So my team, and I'm gonna say this quickly, my team, what we did a couple years ago is we created a patient access specialist program because we identified that there was a gap. In the revenue cycle division, there's a lot of entry-level positions into the hospital, and we were seeing that the trend was that we had a lot of young adults, mainly high school students, that were coming straight out of high school, coming into these entry-level positions, and they were not prepared. So my team, we created an 8-week patient access specialist program. We wrote out a grant. We did the budgeting. We did a lot of ethical decision-making was involved. A lot of policy creations was involved. And we got that grant from the state where we have approved that 8-week specialist program, which is a paid program. And if they successfully complete that paid program, they are guaranteed a job. And that has helped with employee retention within the revenue cycle division of our organization. So I think that could be a huge benefit to me as a board member.
Excuse me, that concludes our interview
Okay.
portion of your segment. Did you have any last remarks?
Other than, I appreciate the opportunity, and I thank you for the consideration. And I pray that, that the best person for the position is selected. And if that person is not me, I want to extend myself, my skills, my services to you all, and whatever I could do to continue to help moving this district forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Does this board feels, is the second candidate here? Madam Secretary, can you find out if the second candidate's here? Okay. Good afternoon. Ms. Williams, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Attorney Hurst?
Right. Good afternoon. I'd like to congratulate you for making it to this point in the process to fill the vacancy on the school board. For today's interview, you'll be given 3 minutes to answer each one of your questions. The board chair will provide you with a little more detail as to how the interview process itself will go. But it's anticipated that your interview today will take up to 30 minutes. Following today's interviews, the board will convene, and it's expected that they will make a final decision on who will fill that board vacancy during this coming week.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for me?
Not at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
You would have an allotment of 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions. Please state your name and address for the record and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Absolutely. My name is Christina Williams. I reside at 4119 First Street, East Chicago, Indiana. A little bit about myself. I have served in academia for over 12 plus years. I started out many years ago as a paraprofessional when Lincoln was still standing, and I worked with that department to ensure that they were unionized. I then started teaching special education at Hammond High School, started at middle school, and then I taught high school. I ran a youth organization program for 7+ years, and I worked with board members in that capacity, and I worked with youth who were impacted by the justice system. And so I developed a strategy and a strategic plan for that company. And I also have fiduciary responsibility. And now I currently serve at Ivy Tech as the Director of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging. And so my work has aligned with supporting students, supporting academics, supporting the communities, and investing in them. And so this decision to take on really aligns with my mission, and it aligns with my plans and goals to help support students, whether through elementary school up until trade school or even collegiate level.
Good afternoon, Christine. How are
Good
you doing?
afternoon.
Yeah, the first question I have is, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
Retention. This is such a word that is used all across the board, right? Even how I serve at Ivy Tech, we talk about retention. And so strategies to talk about retention is, first things first is you have to analyze data, right? You have to understand what's keeping students from being retained, whether it's financial, whether it's not having exposure to opportunities that align with their vision or their personal mission. And then we have to talk about building relationships. Right? We have to talk about building relationships with students so that if there are any issues that need to be addressed, they have someone that they can talk to, whether it's in that building or in that community that can support them. I was just at a conference, an education conference these last 2 days, and one of the things we talked about in academics is it can't just be housed in a small square, right? When we talk about supporting our students, we have to expand that beyond just, as an example, the trustees, right? We have to talk about building it out in the community and working with, our superintendent, working with our educators and the experts in that field to develop more intentional strategies. But the first thing I would say is diving into data, connecting with students to ensure we understand why retention levels are low, and then putting systems in place that support that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? Expound on why and how the district should focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you have identified.
On this side of it, it's a little bit more challenging to identify that, but one of the things I think we have to focus on are career opportunities for our students in the future. So I know we are heavy on math and science, but we also need to talk about developing trades for our students because a lot of them do want to further their careers in getting certifications. And so if we can find ways to build that into the curriculum to support those students who don't necessarily want to transition into traditional 2-year or 4-year institutions, that's something that will not only give them an opportunity to build out their future, but it will keep them invested. And one of the key things I have to say when making such a decision as large as this is having those voices at the table. And so that means talking with students and identifying what they want to see in their curriculum and assuring that we align with what the state standards are, but building in their voice into that as well.
If chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views?
Well, I think in any role that you're in, whether it's personal or professional, there are always going to be moments of challenge or disagreement with someone. What I always do is keep the goal central to what we want to focus on. And in this case, it would be students and student achievement and success. And so I would ensure that communication is clear. I would ensure that the individual feels heard by sharing their perspective. And then I would make sure that we are keeping and identifying the goals of the students and the vision and mission of the board in having those conversations. You never want people to agree. You don't want to sit on a board where everyone agrees, right? You want different perspectives, and you want to be able to identify what those key components of that conversation are and see how you can apply them to the entire system as you're building out a strategy. And so I'm a communicator. I believe in listening, and I believe in supporting different perspectives as needed. So a challenge, I don't know if it's a challenge. I think I would consider it just a difference of perspective.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. My question to you is, how would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
Yeah, so I think that goes back to identifying what the vision and the mission is. You can't accomplish everything in one meeting. You can't accomplish everything in one semester. You really can't accomplish everything in 1 year, right? We have to understand that change is going to happen progressively and over time. And so in that case, I think prioritizing the immediate needs, identifying the resources that are available to really meet those needs, and then going from there to identify what next steps need to be taken to accomplish all of the other goals.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Second question, Ms. Williams. What is your understanding of special education programs offered by the school city of East Chicago, and do they have equal access to the same resources as a general education teacher? And if not, what would you do to address the disparity?
Well, I taught special education, so that really aligns with work that I've already done. And if I can give an example, one of the challenges that I had as a special education instructor was I taught in a self-contained classroom. And so that means the students were with me all day for every subject. At one point, I had about 22 students in a classroom, right? And so you can imagine all of those different emotions and all of those different behaviors, right? What I identified as a need is exposure to a general classroom. And so I had the ability to work alongside my principal at the time to identify courses that I could support an instructor in so that my students could go out into those general classrooms, right? Because then they can see modeled behavior. They can connect with other students who are in gen ed classrooms. And then I was also serving as a support for that instructor. And so an example I'll give you is a science class. All of our students had to take biology. I didn't have a lab in my classroom. So I was able to partner with our science teacher and say, is it possible for me to identify some students who are required to take biology, and I walk with them and serve with them in that classroom while they're learning? And so, again, on this side of it, I don't know the specifics and the details, but just based on what what I've seen and what I believe to be true, I do think that there are resources for special education students. I think we just have to find the best way to identify, and we have to be thinking creatively in ways to support them. There are things, again, that I know have to align with our state standards, and at the same time, we can think creatively to support those students.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
Again, on this side of it, just based off of the data that is shared or the information that is shared, I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that there is the possibility to increase our budget in ways that support our students. Grants are really powerful. I think getting a really strong grant writer and grant team to help secure funding for any of the goals or strategies we want to apply. And the reality is you have to take a deep look into where those numbers are and decide where they're top heavy and where you can find ways to really spread out the money so that it supports students without taking away from the people that are especially on the ground doing the work, right? And so on this end, again, I'll say it requires a deeper dive into the data, and I think you have to also look at previous data. You can't just look at 1 year of a budget and decide what's going to happen. Part of my role in my previous work was forecasting, and so understanding what could possibly happen in the future and then taking a look at previous years to create and establish a solid budget and to work within that budget.
What qualifications, background, and skills do you believe to possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
Oh, well, first things first. I have experience in the classroom. I don't want to call myself a former educator because I believe once you're an educator, you're always an educator. And so in my new role, I've become a community educator, right? And it's a different title, but the work is still the same. And so I'll lead with that as being an educator. But I'll also say that I'm a strategic thinker. Again, part of what I do is analyze data, I analyze numbers, and I could create a strategy around that. And that could be a strategic plan, that could be a communication plan, but part of what I am really strong at is building out plans and systems that are sustainable. Again, I'll go back to me being a strong communicator. I'm an advocate, and at the same time, I enjoy collaborating with people. I am a learner, a lifelong learner, and so not just reading through books, documentaries, and experience, but also learning through people. And so my role here would be able to communicate with the community and learn through them, sitting on the board, learning from each of you, and finding ways to apply that into the system. And so with me being an educator, I just think I'm just a strong collaborator and a strategic planner.
Okay, my question to you is, how familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district? And if selected, what changes would you like to see?
Again, I'm familiar with what information is shared. And I know that East Chicago is not the only district that faces challenges. We are in a climate where nationally our education system is being challenged. We are in a place where schools need to secure more funding to support our staff, our teachers, and intentional about how we want to see the success of students. I believe that all of those challenges can be overcome. I believe that with diligence and communication and transparency, there is a way to pull and extract information from all of the stakeholders to find a really solid way to build up our education system. Students need to feel as though they matter. And so there are small things that can change in making our students feel supported. And I'll just share this brief example. I drop my daughter off to school every day, and it's just so interesting to me. This is something that just stands out to me. There's a bus stop in front of a liquor store. My mind tells me that if this is where we prioritize our students in catching the bus to prepare for the school, something as small as moving it across the street or a block over is something that tells them my community, my school district cares about me, so that I don't have to stand in front of a liquor store for an hour, hour and a half sometimes to get on the bus, right? And that doesn't require a major change. That just requires us evaluating things that we can change that over time can help our students feel like they matter.
Ms. Williams, that concludes our interview. Do you have any last remarks you'd like to make?
I don't have any last remarks, but can I ask a couple of questions?
Sure.
So this is a very unique opportunity for you all to be able to select a person to fill in this role. And so I am just interested in what you all are looking for as a candidate to fill this role and what you find may be the biggest challenge.
Does anybody want to respond to that? Attorney Harris, want to respond?
I can respond generally to the question. I think it's a good question, right? And I think it's a fair one. So the way this process works for filling the vacancy is the state legislature has determined that whenever there's a vacancy, the school board has the authority to step in the shoes of the voters, basically, right? And make that selection until it's time for the next election. Outside of that, the only requirements that the legislature has provided the school board is that the person needs to otherwise be qualified to run for the office. Otherwise, there aren't any special criteria, there isn't anything else there to guide their decision. So I will give this board some credit that they did prepare certain criteria in terms of the questions that you received today. They weighted the answers of those questions for certain things that they wanted to hear. So I think that rubric that they've created is going to help guide the decision-making process for this interview and ultimately the final decision. Outside of that, the decision is not, ultimately it's collective, but they each bring their own perspective as to what's important and what's not. But the questions you received today were weighted. So I hope that answers your question.
Well, it answers it very broadly. I was just curious as to the board members, the trustees that are weighing in, what they valued and prioritized. But if that can't be answered, I totally understand. My next question, the follow-up part to that would be, what do you see as the biggest challenge for the person stepping into this role?
If I can go back to your first question as well, I think the way we prioritize is based on the questions that we ask, because these were selected by each individual board members. In terms of what we value the most is making sure that we have an individual, again, not just a general synopsis of what the state is requiring, because it's very lenient in terms of their requirements, but to making sure that this individual is an individual that's open to the community, that answered pretty much the questions that you did, in a positive way. And again, we'll weigh it that way, and then we'll have our exec session in terms of finalizing the final candidate.
Thank you.
And I'll state that typically the School Board Association will tell new board members that it takes 2 years to learn this job, but it's always a learning process beyond the first 2 years. As you know, laws change and we have to adapt to those laws. The needs change throughout the district, and we're basically operating on the fly, yet trying to plan forward from whatever data we have presented in front of us. So it's a very challenging position. Doesn't pay well, So it's just one that you really need to be dedicated to and, look to spend an inordinate amount of hours to work with others who you may have differing opinions with. We've struggled as a board from day one, and not just this board, I'm talking about when we first had an elected school board. But if you think back, even when we had appointed school board, there were challenges then too. So this position is not an easy one, and as you've seen throughout the U.S. Over COVID and other issues, boards have really been challenged. So it's going to take somebody with, I think, some grit and an ability to both, be understanding and compassionate of others, while at the same time realizing that, as you mentioned earlier, that, students are the bottom line success. That's how we measure ourselves, and I don't think any one of us would give ourselves an A for that. District still has a long way to go, so this person, as Attorney Harris said, is going to be an interim position for 10 months or thereabouts, and so it's going to be taking that 2-year window and shrinking it down to maybe 2 weeks before someone hits the ground running with this board. So as I think, Joel mentioned, that these questions, we could have asked many more questions. This is a big role here. We could ask many more questions, but I think this gives the public a flavor for how we're trying to change from a 5-member board to a 4-member board and back to a 5-member board. So there's a lot of discussion and variety in schools of thought up here. So I would just say that, it's going to take somebody who's very open to conversation and willing to learn.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
That concludes our interview. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you all. Have a great afternoon.
We're going to take a 10-minute recess, and we'll reconvene in about 10 minutes. 1:50. We are going to be reconvening. If you can please put your cell phones on silent. And try to keep your conversations to a minimum low in terms of volume. Appreciate it. Good afternoon, Mr. Kelly.
Hi, how you doing?
Okay. Attorney Harris.
So first of all, good afternoon. I'd like to congratulate you for making it to this point in the interview process. Today, we anticipate that your interview will be up to 30 minutes. You'll be asked a series of questions by each of the board members here, and you'll have approximately 3 minutes to answer each question. Just to let you know what the process looks like from this day forward, we're going to get through all the interviews today. The board intends on convening to discuss how each of the interviews went and their thoughts on the candidates. And ultimately, the goal is just to have a selection made this coming week on who will fill the board vacancy. Any questions for me?
No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you'll have the generous allotment of 3 minutes per to respond to each of the questions. Please, what we want you to do is state your name and your address, as well as a brief introduction of yourself.
Great. My name is Kelly B. Williams, Sr. I reside at 4718 Magoon Avenue in East Chicago, Indiana. Born and raised here in East Chicago, lived here for a majority of my life. Pastor here in the city. 17 years pastoring at Greater Destiny Bible Church at 1920 East Columbus Drive, community activist, done a lot of community work, community service, just done a lot of work with our youth, with mentoring, a lot of work in the schools, working with the teachers in the schools, and then we do a lot of community and at-risk work with youth, violence and gun prevention over in the city of Chicago. And we're going to bring a lot of those things here into the city. So I've lived here for most of my adult life. Love East Chicago, love this city. That's why I stayed here. Went away for school, ended up matriculating back home, and just did what most East Chicagoans do. Love our city so much we can't leave. We go visit other places. But I love my city, and I love it here. I want to be a part of helping to usher what needs to happen in our community and in our schools. That's why I'm here today.
Thank you.
I have the first question here. Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? Why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you have identified?
Well, I believe English and reading are of the utmost importance because they are key components, not just for collegiate education and secondary education, but it's necessary tools in life. A child should start and we should begin to start teaching our children how to read at the earliest age we can. I come from a home of educators, and the first thing I can remember my parents teaching me is how to read. We used to visit the library quite often. I'm an avid reader. I try to read a minimum of 10 to 15 books a year. I've taught it to my children and those that I lead at my church. Reading is a component, a big component. Reading allows us to imagine. It helps us with our ability to critically think. And it promotes comprehension, and it'll couple you and get you ready for those things that are important also, like math. And so I think that those are core things that we need to push in our school system is, number one reason, the number one necessary component for any child to go even think about going to college is they must be able to critically think. That's the critically thinking is the component that's needed in order for any child to go to college. And I want to be a part of making sure that when that child walks across that graduation stage at Central High School, they are equipped and empowered to be successful when they go off to college if they choose to, or in the trades or entrepreneurship. They need to be able to read, and they need to be able to handle components of finance and math.
If chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views?
I don't think it's any different than, I think everybody here understands the vernacular of church and how there are different personalities in church. And I think I've learned it over the 25 years plus of doing ministry that you don't always get to pastor people that are easy. Oftentimes you have to pastor people that can be difficult. You know, I think that skill equates to my ability to work with mostly anybody. I think that anybody that's ever worked with me knows me to be a person that is passionate about what I believe in, but I'm also empathetic to where people stand. And I think that one of the number one goals is not finding how we can work against each other, finding out how we can work together. Because I think that ultimately, if you're on the school board, it's because you want to see our kids get the most and become the most. And so I would do everything I can to work with anybody. And my motto in life is work with who I can while I can with what I can.
Good evening. Good afternoon, rather. How would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
Can you expound on that a little bit?
How would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
Well, okay, come on.
You want me to,
Yeah, if you can expound on, like,
want me to break it down a little bit?
yeah, please.
Okay. For instance, if you was on the school board and the superintendent wants to present this particular project or whatever, how would you handle that?
Okay.
If you're gonna agree with him, disagree with him, how would you handle this if you were on the school board and it was something that you and the superintendent did not particularly agree upon?
Yeah. I think it boils down to conflict resolution. I, as some of you all may be, I've been married for 25 years to the same woman. And in those 25 years, we haven't always agreed about everything, but we understood the end at the beginning. We may not agree with everything, but we learn how to go along and how to give and how to take. And I think that it boils down to conflict resolution, information. And I think that if something makes sense, then you support it. But if it doesn't make sense, you question it. And ultimately, you're not there to be in agreement with everything. You're there to represent the people that put you in office to make decisions for our children. And so you get as much information as you can, and you fight the fight of faith, I think. You utilize that information to get an answer, and then it's like with anything, it's give and take. I think, but ultimately, if the ends has to justify the means. Sometimes I think we come in and we disagree about an issue, without agreeing about the end. And if the means is a part of the ends, and it makes sense, and it's fiduciary, and it's going to benefit our kids, I think ultimately, even though you may have opposition, you sometimes have to allow people, give in order to get to the end.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Pastor Willie, Kelly.
Hey, good afternoon.
What strategies do you see if necessary to preserve retention and curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
Expound on that just a little bit for me.
It's when a child need to be held back, a child needs to be held back for failing grades or cannot read or write. What would be your explanation on that? And also the curriculum that we are using in our school system.
Well, as pertains to retention rates in the schools, I think one of the things that you have to do is look at investment. How much has been invested in making sure that that child is prepared? You got to take a holistic approach to education because our kids live in a poverty area. So there are many challenges that kids face just in coming to school. I think you have to bring those things into account, and you have to cater curriculum around making sure that we do our job to make sure and ensure that that child can succeed.
Okay, thank you.
Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
Well, I think when it comes to fiduciary assignment from a school board trustee, you can only go off of information that you've been given. I don't know that any of us have a finance degree, but we have people and mechanisms in place through audits, through contracted people that come in that make suggestions to the board, and the board ultimately has the responsibility to be good stewards over the dollars that we get on an annual basis and making sure that the bulk of those dollars meet and touch every student that is enrolled in East Chicago Public Schools. And so I think that that is a role and responsibility of every school board member and trustee. You're put in this position by the voters to be a steward over those finances. And so while we aren't degreed and don't have degrees in finance, we do get information from those that are experts in that area, and we make decisions based upon what they tell us, which would hopefully be in the best interest of every student that's enrolled in our schools.
What qualifications, background, and skills do you believe to possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
Okay, good question. I think this may be one of my strengths is I work with people every day. I deal with people every day. I've sat on boards. I sit on, currently, I am the president of the board on 2 nonprofit agencies in Chicago, Illinois, along with our own church, serving as president. So I do understand the vernacular of board roles, rules, and responsibilities. I think I come in as a person who works with everybody. I know a lot of people. And I've been doing the work. Over the 25 years, I've been mentoring a lot of youth and young men, young ladies that come out of our East Chicago Public Schools. I work with a lot. I also worked with a lot of the principals and teachers here, a lot of the social workers within the school system, and done a lot of work to try to partner with the schools to make sure the teachers and the kids have every tool necessary in order for them to succeed. And so I think with a person like myself coming on the board, I come with a vast array of knowledge, of experience, but I'm going to also learn from you all because you've been here doing the work. So I'm somebody that's going to work with people. I'm someone that likes to learn and want to learn the inner workings of how the school board operates. When I look at somebody like Miss Patty Jo, who scratched and clawed and came from the community and is now in the position she's in, and she's learned on the job. When I look at many of you all here, you've learned on the job. You didn't know everything when you came in, but you've learned over the course. And that's one thing about me. I think that when you stop learning, you stop living. And this is another stage of my life, or something I want to, when I leave this earth, I want to do something fulfilling. And I feel like doing this job and working, I've worked a lot from the outside in, and I want to do like Moses. I want to get on the inside and work it out.
How familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district? And if selected, what changes would you like to see?
Another good question. I very familiar with it. We do work with the schools, one church, one school. Every church, a part of that organization, has partnered with a school here in the city, and so we have relationships with the principals. And over the years, I've been in the schools, working with the schools. And one of the things that I noticed is, education is a part of it, but it's also creating a climate and an atmosphere where kids feel safe to learn. I know morale has picked up here lately. But just creating an environment in our schools where kids feel safe. Another is where we understand that the commitment to educate is going to take place more than just in the classroom. It's an understanding of how we tie the school with the community and with the home. And so until we do those things, teachers are going to take the bulk of their day dealing with home issues before they can deal with educational issues. And so I think we have to take a look at how do we create that climate and that atmosphere where, we can create an environment where kids want to learn and see the necessity of it.
Hey, Mr. Williams, what is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? And do they have equal access to the same resources as general education teachers? And if not, what would you do to address the disparity?
Well, that's something that's near and dear to my heart. My aunt was special needs. She had Down syndrome. One of my first jobs was as a teacher's assistant down in Georgia, and I was in the special education department. So I do understand that the burnout from the teachers is quite real, and the turnover, I'm sure, is real. But special education students should receive the same resources, if not even more, than kids in the mainstream education. We need to do everything we can to make sure that they feel a part of the school, a part of the educational environment, and where we can, create things where they feel normalized and not ostracized. And so, again, Ms. Patty Jo, that's something that's near and dear to my heart, having learned how to spell my name from my aunt who had Down, teaching her how to spell her name as a young teenager. With my aunt who had Down syndrome. And so my heart goes out to kids with special needs.
Hey, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
That concludes our interview portion of this meeting. Do you have any final remarks you'd like to make?
Sure. I just like to thank you guys for the opportunity to come in and interview. I feel privileged to be a part of the process. And I feel like all of you may, if you don't know me, you know of me. You know my heart. You know my intentions are real. I come from a family of educators. My father is a longtime business person and longtime resident here in the community. My mother was a teacher here in East Chicago for many years, and she ended up being disabled. But my tie here to the community and to the school has been indelible. And I think that if you're looking for a candidate that's going to come in, be passionate, who's going to come in and work with everybody, who's going to come in with a clear mind, clear heart, and clear conscience, I don't look past me. Stop at me. And again, I want to thank you all for allowing us to participate in this process.
Thank you. Attorney Harris?
Thank you.
I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Richardson, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes. Give us
Hello,
1
everybody.
second. Okay, we're going to reconvene. this segment of our interviews. Attorney Harris.
Good afternoon, Mr. Richardson. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you fine, Mr. Harris. How are you?
Good, good. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you for making it to this point in the interview process to fill the vacancy on the school board. Today, you'll be interviewed by all the school board members. They'll each ask you questions, and you'll be provided 3 minutes to answer each question. It's anticipated that your interview will last approximately 30 minutes.
Okay.
Following today's interviews, which there are several candidates interviewed today, the board plans on convening and making a final decision on who will fill the vacancy, and it's expected that that decision will come this week.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any questions for me?
I have no questions at this time. No.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
Mr. Richardson, you will have a generous allotment of 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions. First,
Okay.
please state your name and address for the record and tell us about yourself.
My name is Alfred Richardson. My address is 4135 Lombardi, East Chicago. I attended Cary Gosh School in East Chicago. I later graduated from Roosevelt. I started a business in East Chicago approximately 35 years ago. I've worked with many elected officials, mayors, and otherwise. It's an MBE. My business is MBE certified in the state of Indiana. And so I'm a product of East Chicago. And I love East Chicago. And I'd like to help to see the kids of East Chicago succeed being a product of East Chicago. I want to, as a member of the board, I want to work with the board members. I want to help the board. I want to be able to reach consensus that helps the children and just do the best I can for the citizens of East Chicago and specifically the students. Now, I want to, if I could, just for a second, talk about my last name because I've heard a couple of things, and let me just give a brief explanation here if I could. When I was born, I was born as Alfred Rogers. I lived most of my life up until about 2006 as Alfred Rogers. I lost my wallet one day, and remember now, this is right after 9/11. And remember, it was very difficult to get identification, very difficult to get anything without the correct documentation. So when I went to the license bureau to get my license replaced, I either had to come up with naturalization papers or a birth certificate or a passport. Well, the only option I had available to me was the birth certificate. When I contacted the hospital where I was born, they had a child born to my mother and born to my father on that day, but his name was Alfred Richardson. And me being as old as I am and as uncomfortable when I don't have a driver's license in my pocket, I told the hospital to send me what they had. I in turn took that to the license branch. And the lady at the license branch said, well, I'll give you a driver's license, but I'm going to give you a driver's license for who you are and not who you've been all these years. So in short, my mom, her last name is Rogers, and all of her children were in the name of Rogers. So I wanted to try to clear that up because there's been some question about my last name. Thank you.
Thank you. If chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views with?
Well, as I said before, I believe that you want to show a united front, and I believe that you want to hash these things out in private. I think all board members want to do what's best for the school city of East Chicago and specifically the kids of East Chicago. And so I think that you want to do that in private session and at least come to some kind of agreement in private session so that when you come out and you're actually in a board meeting, you're able to show a united front because you want the support of the city.
Trustee Smith?
I know, I'm next. Mr.
Mr. President, are you
Richardson?
there?
Yes, I'm sorry. Mr. Richardson, my question to you is, how would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
So it's my understanding that the board has one employee only, that being the superintendent. So I would want to talk with the superintendent to see his thoughts, because after all, he's the specialist. He's the one with the knowledge. I would be a board member and applying more common sense to issues and trying to get to a resolution. So I believe you would just want to talk with the superintendent and get his understanding, tell him what your concerns are. You go back and forth, you just have to work through it. You have to talk, you have to communicate, you have to see what his issues are, what your issues are, what the issue at hand is, see how you can come to some kind of agreement, and then go forward from there.
Well, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Richardson.
Good afternoon, how are you?
Yeah, fine. My question is, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and the curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
I'm sorry, Ms. White. Say again, please. What?
Okay.
I didn't hear that.
What strategies do you see if necessary to preserve student retention and curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
What strategies? Again, I would not be able to answer that question here and now. I would not be able to hypothesize about what I would do in that situation. I would lean on the superintendent and it's the directors underneath the superintendent and try to see what options are available, try to find out what the problem is, and just, I may not know all the answers to, I don't know what's going to come up if I'm appointed a board member, but I know that as long as I have the kids' interest at heart, that's all that I can offer. I don't have an answer for that question. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
I apologize.
Thank you.
I have the next question. Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? And why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you have identified?
Joel, repeat that, please.
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez, repeat that, please.
It's based on student achievement data. What subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? And why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you've identified?
Again, I think these questions all fit into the same category. I'm not able to, I think a student should learn all the fundamentals. Obviously, you must learn to read, you must learn arithmetic, you must learn advanced arithmetic. When you get to calculus and when you get to trigonometry and those things, I just want to make sure that the student is as well-rounded as possible, that the curriculum set forth by the state of Indiana is followed as best as we can follow it, to make sure, obviously, that a person has to be able to read and to write, and then to go as far as they could go in whatever area they were studying at that time. But I, I would be a board member looking to resolve the issues for the students. But to ask that question, that sounds like a question, quite honestly, for one of the directors that works underneath the superintendent and not a board member. I apologize, but that's my best answer.
Thank you.
What qualifications, background, and skills do you believe to possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
So leadership qualities, the ability to, I feel I have the ability to inspire others, to motivate my fellow board members, and to work together as a team. You know, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Indiana plan. It is a plan that specifically targets minorities and women, and what it does is signatory to the unions. And what you do is you're able to get students into like the IBEW, the Indiana, the brothers, the electrical guys, the 150, which is operating engineers, the Teamsters. The Indiana plan takes students from a school like from Central, and they make them apprentices. And when they graduate the Indiana plan, they become journeymen, and then they're eligible to come into one of the unions. So that would be something I would want to work with.
Thank you.
Mr. Richardson,
Yes.
I'm going to take my time and read this because it seems to be complicated to everybody else. How familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district? That's part one. And if selected, what changes would you like to see?
I'm sorry, Ms. Smith, I'm having a hard time hearing first.
How familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district?
I heard that, okay.
Okay. Now, and if selected, what changes would you like to see?
So I wouldn't consider myself very familiar with the current conditions. When I learned about the vacancy, I thought to myself, maybe I could be a help to some of the students in East Chicago. I don't know at this juncture, I wouldn't be able to tell you what changes need to be made. I can tell you that I'm more than willing to learn. I'm more than willing to adapt to what's going on there, but I have to become a member and then be privy to the information, read and study and investigate and find out what needs to be done, and then make sensible decisions. I would not be able to tell you that I'm that familiar with what's currently there now. Again, I feel like these questions, I'm sure they're generic in nature, and I surely appreciate the questions, but they seem to be questions more appropriately asked of one of the directors. I don't know that board members, especially people who are not board members yet, are privy to information that would make them be able to be in a position to make an intelligent answer, to give you an intelligent answer.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. And basically, the questions that we're asking is not to intimidate anybody. It's just basically trying to get the person familiar with what's actually going on in our district. And when we say climate and challenges, what I'm trying to say is like you said, this is a small area, so even if our schools are working, or if our schools are working, or if our teachers are working, if the grades are up, that's basically what that means. The challenges, the things that we're going through.
Trustee Gibson King?
Yes, Mr. Richardson, how are you doing again?
Good, how are you?
Fine. My question is, what is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? And do they have equal access to the same resources as a general education teacher? And if not, what would you do to address this disparity? Speaking of special education.
Well, I would want the special education department to have all the tools needed to achieve their goals. I would want them to the special education department, along with K through 6, along with 7 through 12, I would want everyone to have what they needed to be able to perform their duties, to be able to get their students grades and achievements up to where they need to be. It's the best I can tell you.
Okay, thank you.
I have
So
final,
I just want to say that this is going to be a comprehensive board appointment. And I think all board members are comprehensive in the sense that they adapt to what is put before them. I don't believe that a board member must be that learned in a specific area, whether it be special education or whether it be another area. I just believe that you have to be comprehensive in the sense that you know what you're here for. You're here for the kids. You're here for what's best for the kids. And so there's your attitude. And then when you want to make sure the teachers are well compensated. You want to make sure that we have up-to-date books. You want to, these are just things that I'm thinking of, but I just don't
Mr.
believe
Richardson,
that,
I'm going to step in and ask you the final question. You'll have an opportunity at the end to give a statement. So rather than you go on, let's continue and conclude with this final question. Then you'll have an opportunity to expound on your statements,
Okay.
if you don't mind.
All right.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Our final question is, evaluating the current situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and the challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent? I'll repeat the question. Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and the challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
in business, you're faced with making many critical decisions. And you make those decisions under pressure, whether they be budget constraints or curriculum decisions. You need strong critical thinking skills. All programs, budgetary or spending, come before the board. Again, I hate to be redundant, but it appears on the docket. How would you go out and find funding? I couldn't expound beyond that, sir. I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Well, that concludes our interview portion of the meeting. Do you have any closing remarks you'd like to make?
I was just going to say a minute ago that I just feel like the position that I'm seeking is one of comprehension, and I don't think you need to know all those things. And I totally respect the board, totally respect the questions. I realize that I may not know the particulars in detail to answer those questions. But you know, again, I would keep it basic. Are we graduating students? What are our rates? Are they enrolling in vocational? Are they college bound? Have our test scores increased? Are our teachers properly compensated? Are our students safe in school? Those are the things that would be on my mind. That's the kind of board member I would be. Thank you.
Thank you. And that concludes our interview. And thanks again for participating in the interview and advancing to the second round. Thank you.
Thank you all.
We're going to take about 6 minutes for our next candidate. reconvening our meeting of our interviews. I believe we have Mr. Ortega. How you doing, sir? Can you hear us?
Yes. Yeah, hello. Can you guys hear me? Is everything good?
Yeah. Okay. Attorney Harris?
Mr. Ortega, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you.
All right, this is Attorney Harris. I just want to congratulate you for making it to this point in the process to fill the vacancy that's currently on the school board. Today, you're going to be interviewed by all the school board members. They'll ask you a variety of questions. Your answers will be limited to 3 minutes, and it's anticipated that the length of your interview will be 30 minutes. Following
All right,
today's
sounds
meeting,
good.
okay? Following today's meeting, the board will convene, and it's expected that they'll make a decision to fill this vacancy during this coming week. Do you have any questions for me?
No, no questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll go ahead and get started.
Mr. Ortega, you will have a generous allotment of 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions. First, by stating your name and address for the record and telling us about yourself.
All right, so like you said, my name is Jose Ortega, and I live at 1110 West 145th Street in East Chicago, Indiana. I first want to start off by thanking you for giving me this opportunity to interview with you guys, and especially letting me go in and Zoom with you guys. My apologies for my attire. I am in Indianapolis right now for a football clinic. So I was able to find some time, a little quiet space, so I can talk to you guys about kind of my passion for education, and then also my passion for East Chicago and and the residents of East Chicago. So a little background on myself. I graduated from Bishop Noll Institute, of course, from high school. And then after that, I went to St. Joseph's College in Rensselaer, Indiana, where I studied communication and political science. After that, I wanted to go into public relations or marketing. And then I found myself at Purdue Northwest. And at Purdue Northwest, I found myself going to school at Purdue Northwest to get a master's in communication. And while I was at Purdue Northwest, one of my graduate advisors said, hey, would you be willing to teach a couple classes and get some free admission? And I said, I'm not really a teacher. That's really not my thing. But, as long as it helps pay for grad school, I'll go ahead and do that. And then right when I went into the classroom, I fell in love with it so much that after I finished at Purdue Northwest, I went and I was a teacher at Whiting High School, and then I went back to my alma mater, Bishop Noll, and I'm now at Bishop Noll as a history teacher. So I fell in love with education because I really think that, and I might say this a couple times, but I really think that we have to invest in our youth, and that we have to kind of look out for them. And as long as we have good role models in the classroom, and in the outside curricular activities, I think that's a huge benefit for them. So when I heard that there was this vacancy opening, I decided to apply and just to have an open dialogue about you and about kind of our passion for education.
Thank you.
Mr. Ortega, my question to you
Yes.
is, how would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
That was the last part was needed actions.
Well, needed decisions,
Oh, okay.
but it's needed
That's one of
actions.
the-
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for that question. I guess in my experience, just as a teacher, you need to work with a lot of different groups. It's not always just the students. A lot of times it's working with your administrators. And I think that the one thing that needs to happen is just open dialogue. Although I am in education, like they are the experts in their field. Some of these administrators, whether it be the superintendent or whether it be the building principals, they're the ones, at least for me, they're the ones that are in the classroom or in the school every day. And they have probably the best insight of what's happening in their community. And I think us as school board members, it's an advisory in how we can help them to be fully successful in their roles. So going back to the question, how would I work with administrators? How would I work with the superintendent? I think what we just need is just open dialogue, and especially when it's things that we might not be on the same page with, is to have that mutual level of respect for them, and hopefully they would resend that mutual respect back. And at the end of the day, we are working to make the students' educational lives a little bit better. So for me, it's just open communication and just being honest and respecting one another. And that's also with working with you all. It's just the mutual respect that we have for each other.
Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Ortega. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Hi, my question is, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and curriculum in East Chicago Public Schools?
When it comes with retention and just working with curriculum, I think the one thing that really needs to be focused on is the adults in the building. And it's finding and recruiting adults from all levels, not just principals and teachers, but also our paraprofessionals, our teachers' aides. My mom was a teacher's aide with the school city for about 10 years, and she would share with me the stories of how they were impactful in the class.
We'll give Mr. Ortega a second to chime in again. Mr. Ortega, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Okay, that's fine. If you want to continue answering?
Sure, Robert. I think the last thing I was talking about was just my mother, how she was a teacher's aide. And I think it's just going back to just making sure that we have qualified people in our classroom and good people that the kids can kind of look up to and that the kids can learn from. So I think that's probably one of the biggest things we can do is just support the people in our building, recognizing them for their good efforts, celebrating their accomplishments when needed. And I think that'll make an impact on kind of the school culture throughout our education community.
Thank you.
Mr. Ortega, can you still hear us?
Okay. I'm sorry. It might be my connection going in and out.
Okay. You okay now? Can you
I can hear you.
Okay, great. The question I have is, based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? And why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you have identified?
Well, I think the answer to that has to be our English and our math skills for our students. I think that those are the foundations for all their skills kind of going forward. and those are the skills that are probably most prevalent today. As like I said, as an educator, as long as they have the ability to formulate their thoughts, whether on paper or whether in any sort of oral presentation, is going to be highly beneficial for them, not just in academic, but also in their personal lives, and then also kind of their on like a civic level. So those are the ones that I think are most crucially important. The other one that I would say probably is the second most important is that civic education that they're getting, and it's studying social studies. It's studying what's happened in the past, so that you can kind of see the world today, and you could know that you could be a difference in the world. So I think that's one thing that I think is lacking with this younger generation, is that they see all the problems in the world, and they think that sometimes the problems are too big for them. But even just kind of using the data to show them that you can make a difference would be really beneficial. So going back to that previous question, I think English and your English and your writing and your math skills are probably the most important, but also there has to be a level of civic engagement, and it has to start at the kindergarten and the primary levels all the way through 12th grade.
Thank you.
Mr. Ortega, if chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views with?
I think it goes back to what I was talking about with just having mutual respect for one another. And I think that I am one that naturally plays devil's advocate in decisions. And personally, I like to push people so that they can make the best argument that they have, especially as our role of being in the public. A lot of times, we have to be confident in the decisions that we make as a board. And if we have those disagreements, as long as we respectfully kind of go back and forth so that we make our argument stronger, and then when we finally come to a decision, I think that's going to build a little bit more confidence in us as a whole organization that we made the right choice in whatever decision we made. So again, I think it's mutual respect. That's probably the biggest thing, is just mutual respect. We're all professionals. We all have something to give to our discussion, and I'm one that is willing to listen to anybody, and even hear out their arguments. And that's something that I have to do basically just in my work, whether it's talking with administrators or parents or students. It's just having that open dialogue and really discussing the issues, and then just mutual level of respect.
Mr. Ortega, how familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district? And if selected, what changes would you like to see?
Well, I think the challenges that are happening in East Chicago are sadly the same issues that are happening kind of across our region and across the whole United States. I think the biggest issue with East Chicago is Um, a lot of times, we have struggles, and that's in our community. And I think that a lot of times we focus on those struggles, but we don't focus nearly enough about our successes and our triumphs. So as coming into this board, what I would hope is that I can offer my experience and my skill set to kind of just push forward the school city so that we can listen to each other, we can have respectful dialogue, and we can engage the community into truly kind of pushing us forward into like the next decade for ourselves. I think when it comes to just community engagement, whether that's, I'm talking about like the school city and also the city of East Chicago, I think that we're in a perfect opportunity as board members, because I think a lot of our issues could be solved with education. I think when you go back, any issues that we have in the school city or the city can be dealt with education. Education is that silver bullet that could solve a lot of the problems, and that really is by just educating our students and making sure that we have good people in the room, good adults in the building that they're able to learn from, and that they're able to talk about what they're dealing with in everyday situations. So I think that's probably the one thing that I would bring is just obviously my experience in education, but also just my experience working with teachers, administrators, parents, willing to, again, listen to anyone and work with them to be successful for our students.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ortega, my question is, what is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? And do they have equal access to the same resources as general education? And if not, what would you do to address the disparity?
I think if I heard you right, it's what educational resources are offered with the city, and what was that last
No,
part?
let me repeat the question. The question is, what is your understanding? What is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? And do they have the same equal access as the general education teacher? And if not, what would you do to address the disparity?
Yeah, I think special education. I think special education is often one of the areas in school systems that is really the ones that are underdeveloped. And what I would do is I would make sure that I talk with principals and stakeholders and teachers and parents and see what else they need from us. I think that the students don't get enough of the resources that they need to succeed. And I think a lot of that problem is coming from it's pretty much coming from the state, because the state is just limiting how much resources that public education's receiving. So one thing that I would love to do is to go down and travel to Indianapolis and try to conduct meaningful conversations and dialogue with some of these state legislators and tell them what we are struggling with in terms of education, in terms of special education, and just really kind of engaging in that dialogue and see if there's anything else that we can do to get more resources for our students. Because at the end of the day, we don't want to leave these students on the side. I think that some of these students, they could either fall to the wayside, or we can bring them back into the fold. And we just need a little bit more resources, and hopefully, I know I'm just one person, but hopefully I can at least engage in some of that dialogue with them in order for them to see that we really need some change in the system.
Okay, thank you.
I have the next question, which is evaluating the current financial, I'm sorry, let me start again. Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
I'm going to be completely honest. Finances are not my strong suit. But what I would hope is that I can sit down with the finance team. I can sit down with some of you, and we can engage in conversations in order to really kind of just curb spending, but also look for other resources that we might be able to bring in, either if that's partnering with local government and getting grants, or working with the state government to offer more educational resources for our students at East Chicago. So I would basically work with you all. I would work with the finance committee, and I would say that whatever you need me to do, I am more than willing to sit down and really get to the root of some of these issues. But also, I will be one that would go and lobby for outside organizations, but also to our many forms of government to seek help where needed.
Thank you.
I have the final question. What qualifications, background, and skills do you believe you possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
Well, I think that my background as a teacher and an educator and a coach is really something that I can offer to the school city. I think that having this perspective, and someone that as a teacher and a coach, you work with administration, you work with your building leadership, you work with the parents and even like the outside organization. I think these are things that would be beneficial to my role on the school board with you all. Also, I'm someone on a personal issue, on a personal level, I'm someone that is always going to be able to engage in open dialogue. Like I said, I know it sounds repetitive, but when I talk about respect, I truly mean respect for everybody in the room, that we can have our disagreements, but it's not going to get anything below that, because at the end of the day, we are here for the students. And I think that we have such an awesome responsibility that we can make a change in these students' lives. And I am really looking forward to the opportunity to just being part of that process, and trying my best for the whole community to make our schools better.
Thank you. That concludes our interview. Do you have any closing remarks you would like to make?
No, just the closing remarks is just thank you again for allowing me to interview. Please, thank you for allowing me to talk to you over Zoom, and please, I apologize for the T-shirt and the appearance. It's it's been a whole day of just clinic and conference work down here, but I just really appreciate the opportunity. Like I said, I would really love to be a part of this. I have lived in East Chicago my whole life. I'm very proud to be in East Chicago. That's one of the reasons why I haven't moved out. I love the community. I love the city. And hopefully I can work with you all in this position to better our school community, but then also at the same time working with the greater community, with the greater population of East Chicago. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Attorney Harris, you have any last?
No, just as I said in the overview at the beginning, the board will be convening and making a decision this upcoming week, and we'll get back to you. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Yes, thank you very much. I appreciate meeting you all.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. That concludes our interview for Mr. Ortega. Madam Secretary, want to see if the next candidate's outside?
Oh, so he didn't show up, huh? Was he here? Next. Oh, I thought he was zooming in.
Good afternoon, Mr. Edwards.
Good afternoon.
Attorney Harris?
Mr. Edwards, can you hear me okay? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, good afternoon. I'd like to congratulate you for making it to this point in the interview process. Today, you're going to be interviewed by all the board members who will ask you questions. Your responses will be limited to 3 minutes, and it's anticipated that your interview will last 30 minutes total.
Okay.
Okay? Following today's interviews, the board will convene, discuss all the candidates that have been interviewed today, and the goal is that this upcoming week, a final decision will be made as to who will fill the vacancy currently on the board. Any questions for me?
Nope.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started.
You'll have a generous allotment of 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions, okay? First, you want to state your name and address for the record and tell us about yourself.
Okay, my name is Carlisle Edwards, 532 Rickon Place, East Chicago. I've been a resident for roughly 20 years. Been actively involved in nonprofit work in the area. I was a frequent speaker at the public comments for not only the school board, but the city council. I have years of experience working, including working on the school boards, working with libraries in schools, ranging from the size of Dallas ISD and Houston ISD, all the way down to smaller libraries in schools, etc. And you pretty much have seen a copy of my resume and other material I sent in. If you have any more questions relating to that, I'll be glad to answer them.
Hi, Mr. Carlisle. My question is, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
Okay, can you repeat that, please?
Yes. What strategies do you see if necessary to prevent students' retention and the curriculum in the East Chicago Public Schools?
The first thing I see is that in order to be a good school board member, you need to have a strong vision, and that vision has to be cohesive among all the board members. The strategy will also include strong communication with not only the students, but also the faculty. I think it also needs to include key community members and parents. We need to make sure, when I ran for the school board a few years back, one of my models was, if it wouldn't be good enough for my own children, it shouldn't be good enough for any child. I believe that all children need to have that same cohesive ability to be able to receive the same education, high quality, and so on. And I think there needs to be a strategic long-range planning process in that would include members of the school city itself, even including some students and some community members to build that long-range plan.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next question. Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? And why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you have identified?
Okay, basically, I think the basic strong education needs to include what used to be referred to as the 3 R's, reading, writing, arithmetic, but not just the ability to read, but the ability to read with comprehension. If a student is not able to comprehend what they're reading, then we need to work on that aspect as well. I think we also need to work on areas of civics, government, history, because if we don't know where we came from, how are we going to be able to have a better plan of where we're going to go to? I believe that those are the key points. But I also would like to see more structure in some of the other areas, the arts, music, and some of those areas. Everyone knows that the arts and music are vital parts and integral to anyone's society and culture and ethnicity, and that those are key to helping the student learn as well.
I have the next question. If chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views?
In other words, how would I communicate effectively with a board member that,
I'll repeat the question.
okay,
If chosen, how would you effectively manage a challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views with?
one of the key things that everyone needs to do is that's how to eliminate some of those issues is number one, to find common ground on which you both can agree. And once you are able to find that common ground, then you move forward towards managing some of the other issues that may pop up. You need to make sure that you are friends as far as to a certain point, be able to agree on what you do agree on. Because if you find common ground, it's a lot easier to move into those areas where you don't have common ground and work out those differences.
Thank you.
My question to you is, how would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed action?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time, please?
Okay. How would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on needed actions?
Okay, once again, like I mentioned before, you begin with a common ground and then you work from there. Everybody seems to have their own view on how education should be handled. And I think that working with the superintendent, finding a common ground, working with them on those areas where you do agree, and then be able to present research and facts and figures about how your side and how you're able to support your side, and then work from that. Data and research a lot of times is needed in order to be able to work well together.
Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Carlisle. My question is, the second question is, what is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? And do they have the same equal resources as the general education? And if not, what would you do to address the disparity?
Okay, can you repeat that one more time, please?
Yes. What is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? Do they have equal resources, the same resources as the general education? And if not, what would you do to address the disparity?
Okay, I'm not quite sure I fully understand the question you're asking.
I'm speaking about the special, we have, we have children that have challenges in our school systems all over.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking about the special education programs that are available for a child that have a free and appropriate education in our school systems. You want me to repeat the question again?
Okay, in the school city of East Chicago, a few years back, some of you may remember, there was one superintendent, Michael Harding, and the community had a lot of disagreements with him. And I was able to speak out, and I was glad that that first school board meeting, the Harrison cafeteria was packed. There's a lot of people, former board member Lawrence, that know that I used to attend them on a regular basis. Even when we only had like 2 or 3 people from the community working on it. I presented a paper to Michael Harding that showed that even the Department of Education did not approve of the software that he, for however he did, I'm not sure quite how, but he convinced the school board to spend money on. We need to address our education with research-backed ways of doing things. And we also need to address the education to make sure that we have the data and the resources that are needed to be able to provide the education levels that our students should have. School TV Chicago has had a history of, if you read the data, 25% of the adults in East Chicago above the age of 25 do not even have a high school diploma or GED. We need to fix that, and we need to go after resources that we can utilize to better improve our education so that we don't have students who fail out or held back too far, etc.
Okay, thank you.
I have the next question. Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
Okay, I know that one of the largest issues is the voucher program that is mandated by the state and how that works, where a lot of the resources and budgetary constraints that are placed on the school board are because of the voucher program and other programs that provide the issues that are currently being faced. I would go about looking at avenues of other funding sources that can be used to help the finances of the school setting. This could include grants. This could include partnering with corporations in the area that feed off of the school setting. There are a multitude of ways in order to be able to resolve the financial issues, as long as we are willing to look not only outside the box, but look as if there is no box constraining us. I know there are certain ways in which we can't go after financial problem solving, but there are a lot of ways in which we can help resolve those issues.
I have the next question. What qualifications, background, and skills do you believe you possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
Okay, I have multiple years of experience serving on the school boards in the past, although that has not been here in the East Chicago area. I've lived in a total of 9 different states. I've served on school boards as Lawrence, as Dallas, and Austin ISD, and I've also served on my hometown school board back in Pennsylvania. that experience coupled with the one project you have an overview of, the Bridges to Care, that the school city participated in, which was going successfully until certain things arose and it unfortunately died, because I think we could have improved a lot of things. We had a committee that was comprised of school principals, community members, working on the education, working on, we even had a group of people who worked on the truancy issue. We actually had a plan put in place, working in cooperation with the former chief of police, Mark, as well as the school principals in other areas. So I have a lot of experience working with school boards. I have a lot of experience working with nonprofits that do work with the schools, not only here in the school city of East Chicago, but in other communities as well. I also served on the Lake County Substance Abuse Council, where I was the chairperson of the prevention committee, where we made a lot of plans for education inside the schools and outside the schools with parents. A lot of times parents don't have the tools in front of them to be able to help their kids. A lot of parents are unfortunately not prepared, or they feel like they can't be prepared, even though they may not have a high school diploma. So they may feel like they don't have the background to be able to help their own kids succeed. And we were teaching them how to do that. Also how to spot what your kids are involved in, making sure that they are doing the right things. So one of the things too is, like I said, making sure the parents are involved in a positive way, making sure that the community is involved in a positive way, to be able to help the school city in every way that they can. Educating schools.
I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up.
Hmm?
Your 3 minutes are up.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Thank you.
The next question I have for you is, how familiar are you with the current challenges and climate in our district? Second part of that question is, and if selected, what changes would you like to see?
Okay. Some of the challenges include how some members of the community perceive the school board and the school district. Some of them have erroneous beliefs about how the schools are being run or operated. I think one of the things that we would need to do is improve the communication between the schools and the parents, and even maybe develop some parents who would be willing to act as intermediaries. I have to apologize for the way I've been talking. I have no teeth in my upper jaw right now. But anyway, we need to make sure that the community is involved. The local businesses are involved so that they can help present a positive image to the school city. The school city needs to work in cooperation with a lot of the nonprofits, not just the ones that are working in education, but also working on developing the skills needed to go beyond the high school graduation. As we developed in the Bridges of Care, we were looking at not only case, from free birth through education, but we're also looking at helping them develop the skills that they need beyond education all the way up to when they unfortunately pass away. We need to look at the community as a whole and work with them and have them work with us in positive. And even if we need to set the positive image, we need to do what is necessary in order to have the education for the parents and the community as a whole. Years ago, there was a saying that came out, it doesn't take just parents, it takes the community. And we need to develop that in a strong way. Did I answer the question?
Yes.
Okay.
That concludes our questions for you. Do you have any closing remarks you would like to make to us?
Okay, basically, I've lived, like I said, in East Chicago for roughly 20 years. I've been involved in the community in multiple ways. I've worked with a lot of the nonprofits and even some of the businesses in the area. When we developed the Business of Care program, we have over 30 nonprofits, private sector and public sector entities together. And it was showing signs of success. And I won't get into details about why it fell apart, but I would like to see something like that rebuilt so that we work together, not only K through 12, but make sure that the students are prepared, not only when they enter the doors of our schools, but when they graduate from our schools and go into the community. Unfortunately, I know, are sometimes losing students who go off to college, and then they never return, they go off somewhere else. Even though that's a part of life, we need to figure out ways in which we can have some of those graduating stars return and help their home community. And I think that's one of the things I've always worked towards. Every project I worked with, every project I developed, we need to have that.
Thank you. Attorney Harris?
So the board, as I indicated earlier, is going to meet here in the coming days and make a final decision this week, and they'll be in touch with you. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we'll recess for 10 minutes for our next candidate. our interview portion. This is our last candidate, Mr. Dio Lane. Good evening.
Good evening.
Attorney Harris?
Good evening, sir. I'd like to congratulate you for making it to this point in the interview process to fill the vacancy on the school board. For today's interview, you will be interviewed by each of the school board members. They will each be asking you questions. You'll have 3 minutes to provide your answer, and it's anticipated that your interview will last approximately 30 minutes. From this point forward, just so you know what the next steps are for the board will be meeting following the conclusion of all the interviews today to discuss all the candidates and their thoughts on them. And the goal is that this coming week, a final decision will be made with respect to the vacancy. Okay. Any questions for me?
No.
All right, well, we can go ahead and start the interview.
Again, what Attorney Harris mentioned, you have a generous allotment of 3 minutes to respond to each of the questions. We're going to start off by first stating your name and address for the record, and then telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, my name is Dio Lane. I live in East Chicago, Indiana. Address is 4914 Bering Avenue, apartment 2R. About myself, I'm from Toledo, Ohio. I moved here 6 years ago to start my career on the railroad. What brought me here today is that I want to give back, get more involved in the community, and give more to the youth.
Thank you.
I have the first question. Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? Why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you have identified? Want to repeat it?
Yeah, can you repeat it again?
Yeah. Based on student achievement data, what subject or subjects do you believe should be the district's highest priority in terms of improving student learning? And why and how should the district focus on improving student mastery in the course or courses you've identified?
I'll say writing. It's like writing is different from when I was in school. I noticed some kids don't know how to write in cursive. And when I was in school, that was taught like in 3rd grade. So I think that would be one of the things I want to focus on, is learning how to write in cursive.
I have the next question. If chosen, how do you effectively manage the challenging board member with whom you have conflicting views with?
I try to solve problems, understand that person's point of view, and hear them out, and try to get things solved before things won't go further.
Thank you.
How would you work with the superintendent when there are different opinions on much-needed decisions?
I'll try to meet in the middle, common ground.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Mr. Lane. My question is, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and curriculum in the East Chicago schools?
Can you repeat the question again? Sorry.
Yes, what strategies do you see if necessary to preserve students' retention and the curriculum in the East Chicago schools?
I say more trying to understand the students on like why they having problems, like with each subject, or try to learn their weakness and try to help there.
Okay, thank you.
I have the next question. My question is, evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and the challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent? I know that was a long question, I'll repeat it. Evaluating the current financial situation and challenges in our school district, how do you perceive the current financial situation and the challenges we face in overseeing the budget? And what alternative methods would you consider ensuring that our district finances remain solvent?
Oh, I would look at it as each one as what's a gain and which one is a loss, and try to budget, try to cut costs and things that's not working, or try to come up with new ideas.
I have the next question. What qualifications, background, and skills do you believe you possess that would contribute to the board's ability to advance the district's mission and vision?
Well, my background is I'm an employer, so I have dealt with students. I have done job fairs, job shadowing, helping students like get in trades or whatever they dreams after high school. Also, I have mentor a couple students into going to Job Corps when they face hard times. Like, have some couple students I mentored, they wasn't that great in high school, so I try to help them.
Thank you.
Okay. How familiar are you with the current educational climate and challenges in our district?
To be honest, I'm not that familiar, but I'm willing to learn.
Thank you. The other part of that was, if selected, what changes would you like to see?
The changes I like to see, the different attitude that students have, try to make education fun. I see a lot of students, they just come to school like they don't want to be here, so I'll try to create positive energy.
Thank you.
Yes, my question, what is your understanding of special education programs offered by the East Chicago Public Schools? And do they have equal access to the same resources as general education teachers? If not, what would you do to address the disparity?
I say I'm not familiar with special education, but I'm willing to learn.
Thank you.
Mr. Lane, that concludes our interview questions at this time. Do you have any closing remarks you would like to make?
No, not at this moment, no.
Okay. I'll turn it over to Attorney Harris.
Mr. Lane, the board is going to convene here in the coming days and make a final decision, and you'll be hearing from one of us.
Okay,
Okay?
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again. That concludes our interview portion of the of the special session for today. So I want to thank the audience. I want to thank the folks that are on live Zoom for participating in the interview process. As Attorney Harris did mention, that we are still working on making sure that we finalize our candidates. Once we do that, we will have a special session to introduce that candidate, as well as, and hopefully have the candidate set at our next meeting. Thank you very much. That concludes our special session.